Obviously, we know that our current pandemic can be traced back to animals. And the fear is that in the future, animals might lead to other sorts of infections going, crazy viral across the country and across the world in this particular way. And a lot of experts are worried that if we lower our guard in terms of food safety regulations in large slaughterhouses in particular, that likelihood could become more grave. And so we have a new analysis from Food and Water Watch that is included in a lawsuit against the USDA that says in plants, these are large slaughterhouses, some of the biggest corporate slaughterhouses on the planet, where a new regulatory or deregulatory system has been put into effect by the Trump administration that, quote, federal government veterinarians were precluded and prevented from adequately inspecting animals and carcasses that had signs of diseases, recent treatment, and other abnormal food safety and public health related conditions that would render an animal or its meat not fit for human consumption. So what they're worried about, Brett, is that this new change, which we're going to give people details about, is going to make it more likely that things are going to slip through the cracks, either unintentionally or just as a cost of doing business, and that could make people significantly ill. And remember, like swine flu, we're talking about places where there's a lot of swine going through literally every day.
I mean, regardless of like effects on future potential foodborne pandemics, this will have effects now. This will have effects on people's food safety. And when you thought of ways you could die during a pandemic, food contamination didn't necessarily start out as one of them. So congratulations to the Trump administration for using this as an opportunity to get more stuff they wanted anyway, and in doing so, finding new ways for people to die.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the experts before we get into some of the details about the changes. So this is from Zach Corrigan of Food and Water Watch, who says, while people across the country are fighting against a dangerous pandemic believed to have come first from animals, USDA is eliminating necessary safeguards against the spread of infectious diseases from swine. USDA is endangering public health. And so, as we alluded to, a lawsuit is going forward. But let's talk about some of these changes now. So first of all, a quote from an inspector, Anthony Vallone. We've previously used this. This is back a couple of months ago about the effect of these changes. So Anthony had said, it's so hard to go to work without feeling physically sick watching this just happen, unfolding in front of you, especially since you took the oath to protect the American people. And specifically, what are they changing? So in traditional plants, as many as 7 federal inspectors work on the processing line, handling hog carcasses and checking for defects. Under the new system, that number will be reduced to 2 or 3 federal inspectors who have more experience, but who will have limited hands-on interaction with the carcasses. And so instead, the plant's own employees will be checking and sorting the carcasses and letting the federal inspectors check their work from a distance, and there is no required federal training for those employees. So it is less inspectors. They're farther away from the line. They're the plant's employees who have a strong incentive to just let the line go as fast as possible, who aren't being trained, are going to be responsible, and some guy's going to occasionally glance over from 20 feet away and hope to see a sign of disease.
It's a jungle out there, and by a jungle I mean the book The Jungle.
Mm-hmm.
So central to the progressive movement is stuff like this, where you find ways to protect people who seem powerless from the whims of corporations and other powerful entities. Food safety is one of them. Like this is one of those regulations no one should complain about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you should be happy that we are inspecting food to make sure it doesn't kill people. Now, it gets more and more perverse the more you get into it. It's weird that I'm saying, like, I support the people who want to handle animal carcasses. I think more people should have hands-on experience with animal carcasses. Like, that sounds crazy, but in this situation, it absolutely works and is necessary to keep people safe.
Yeah.
But just one other thing is, like, built into you'll hear capitalists, like, this is an actual argument from people who want unbridled capitalism without common sense regulation. Their argument is literally this: if people die, then it will have an adverse effect on the business model of that company that produced food that killed people. There's so much wrong with that, aside from just the obvious. And it plays out the way we see it play out with, like, bailout money. Bailout money will come in and save those companies. They're not afraid of it, because the reason they have those big deals in the first place, the way that they've been able to get away with a lot of the shady practices they've had in the first place, is because they give money to politicians who give them favorable status that politicians until now essentially have been too afraid to do because of how obviously stupid Trump's plan is. But Trump, this stuff that you're pulling from before the pandemic, has been so brazen and doesn't care, and has been able to like be the mouthpiece for the wackos, like the anti-vax type wackos out there. It's very, very frustrating. And then now with the pandemic, when people are looking the other way, he's using this as an opportunity to do things that he wasn't brazen enough to do back then.
Yep. And more quickly, certainly. This is, and it's so like they try to change regulations to benefit corporations and increase their profits all the time. That's the most obvious thing in the world. But this is the most obvious example of it. Like, who looks at this, a regular person, and says, "Yeah, that's for me. They did that to make my life better." Nobody thinks that. It's obviously just to let them get more hog carcasses processed every hour. That's the only reason. They're literally, by the way, they are literally changing the federal limit on the line speed. It's being removed. So there was a limit on how fast you could go, which made it a little bit more likely that you would find defects if they were there. No, that thing could be zipping by at 100 miles an hour. It's going to be like the most bloody, like macabre I Love Lucy episode ever.
Trick knows this episode.
Just bits of, oh, and by the way, in this, what is she stuffing her face with? Well, potentially feces, sex organs, toenails, bladders, and unwanted hair. Those are the sorts of defects, among others, that these inspectors were looking for. And Trump feels like weeding those out costs too much money. You need some more pig in your meat. That's what you apparently need.
Can we go back to that last graphic, John?
We can.
Unwanted hair. Is there wanted hair?
Wait, that's not one of them.
Like, when I said there would be pigtails in my pork patty, I thought just the tail of the pig, not actual pigtails.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the sex organs, though. Like, that's probably meaty. Bladders even, I don't care. But the nails and the feces and the hair.
I want to... So I want to end with a suggestion. So this is something I tweeted about yesterday, and people seem to agree largely. Beyond sausage, you should be done with sausage. You don't need regular sausage anymore. It is great. The price could go down a little bit. That is true. But you don't need regular sausage. There is the difference between it, if there is, and I don't think for a lot of people they would even necessarily know or care about the difference. But if it exists, it is not significant enough to open yourself up to the baked-in health risks of the regular sausage, let alone what could potentially be in it that we don't expect to be there, as well as the obvious, the suffering of the animal, the effect on the climate, all of that stuff. Like, it is just too good, and there are more and more meats where the meatless version of it is just indistinguishable. Like Gardein crispy chicken tenders, those are as good as chicken, honestly. Like, chicken nuggets aren't even meat. And yet, we still grind up a chicken to make something that's arguably not meat. Go with the fake version. It's just as good, and Beyond Sausage is now just as good as well.
I just don't like the name.
I know.
Just like better sausage.
Better sausage. And look, the Impossible Burger.
It's not sausage.
I can't believe it's not sausage. That's a home video. Anyway, yes, just do that. Go with those. Ignore what I just said before, right there. But what I said earlier, go with that. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.